Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. So this past week, the Treasury yield curve finally uninverted after a record-breaking, I think, 24 months. It was the longest time the yield curve had been inverted, and a lot of people are celebrating that recession was averted. And I got some bad and good news. The bad news, I'm going to put bad in quotes, and we'll see why in a second. The bad news is that historically, the recession that inverted yield curves correlate to usually happen just as the yield curve starts to uninvert, right? During the 2000s of dot-com recession, the yield curve started to uninvert at the beginning of 2001, and we had a recession shortly after it. I think officially it began in March of that year, although we didn't really declare we had been in a recession until after 9/11. And then during the great financial crisis, we had a yield curve uninvert in 2007. And obviously, the recession didn't begin until mid 2008. It wasn't really declared until around the time of the election. It was a big political issue during that time, right? We had a very brief yield curve inversion in 2019. This was before we knew about the pandemic. And I think if the pandemic didn't happen, we still would have had a recession. The pandemic kind of forced the recession out of the system. So instead of a long, shallow one, we had a deep and short one, right? It's kind of a trade-off that we were forced to make, right? And then this time around. So it seems like the longer the yield curve stays inverted, the longer the resulting. I got to point that out. But I have some good news, though, because historically, recessions actually are good for us in terms of our life expectancy, our health, and our connectivity with the rest of the world. So during the 2008 global financial crisis, mortality in the United States fell 2 to 4%, depending on who you listen to. I got two strategies for you during this coming recession, right? Whether it comes tomorrow or next year, I got two very timeless strategies for you to follow. Number one, so recessions often reduce human mortality, but why? The problem is that we aren't very good at using our wealth for good things, right? Just look at how many people will die early if they win the lottery, right? I hear so many people tell me that if they hit a windfall, right, as soon as they get their inheritance, if Bitcoin goes to $1 million, if even some of my art, even some of my followers or who are buying bismuth, if bismuth ever goes to $1 million, the first thing they're going to do is to quit their jobs, right? And unfortunately, a lot of lottery winners are like that. And I don't need to tell you the statistics of lottery winners don't tend to live to be 1,000 years old, right? I think most people can appreciate that. But why not? We could use our resources for good too, right? If I hit it big with bismuth, I'm going to keep my job and do it 1,000 times better because I'll have better negotiating power there, right? And I'll be able to stand up for myself. I'll be able to eat a whole lot better, right? I'll be able to have time for myself. And so whatever you do during this recession that benefits your health, keep it for the next boom, right? You'll be better. You'll have both the money and the good habits, right? Why don't you give that a try this time around, right? The second thing I want to point out is if you remember at the beginning of COVID, the stock market plunged 50%, precious metals plunged 20%. I bought a lot of precious metals during that time, right? Even if you like crypto, it also plunged quite a bit. And strategic metals will definitely plunge a lot, right? I think bismuth plunged 75%. I wasn't doing it at the time. But treat this recession like it's a fire sale and load up, right? Instead of thinking how much did I lose, right? Imagine you go to the grocery store and you see that your favorite brand of toilet paper has been slashed 75%, right? Our first reaction isn't to think about how much money we wasted into our ass over the years, right? The equity in my ass just went down 75. How many times have you heard somebody say that when toilet paper plunges, right? No, they stock up. They think, oh my God, I'm saving a lot of money today, right? And then they take the money that they would have spent on toilet paper and they invest it well, right? So treat it that way when you see your favorite investment, whatever it is, right? There's no telling what's the future, but whatever it is, it's probably going to plunge 50, 75% at the beginning of the recession. So it's a fire sale. Pretend you went to a grocery store and saw that stuff 75% off, right? It's easier for me because I'm an artist, right? It literally does feel like a fire sale for me because I'm still selling my art for whatever it is, right? All right, some words of wisdom for the next recession. Learn from what makes you healthy during the recession, and keep those good habits after the recession has subsided, and treat it as a fire sale. This is the Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum.